Nice Speech Lady. Useful resources for medical SLPs. Created by one who is just like you out in the field. Creative, practical, evidence-based resources. Building up, learning from one another.
Welcome back to Nice Speech Lady Show. I'm Wilson Nice, your host, a speech pathologist and owner of the website Nice Speech Lady. Welcome back to the show. We have a great show lined up for you today. I wanted to start with a quote that I recently came across by Richard Branson. There is no greater thing you can do with your life and your work than follow your passions in a way that serves the world and you. Something to think about today. Follow your passions in a way that serves the world and you. I don't know about you, but I'm following my passions, and hopefully it's serving the world and serving others. So we have a great show lined up for you today. We have Stacey Neustadt. She's the owner and co-creator of Alexicom Tech, an AAC app that's available out there. And so we are talking AAC today, AAC options, and how to get a hold of information about her apps, and kind of some hot topics going on with AAC. Before we get to that, though, let's jump on over to Nice Speech Lady. For those of you that are not familiar with Nice Speech Lady is a website that I created for speech pathologists, and it has a lot of resources available to speech pathologists to use. And here is Nice Speech Lady. I have a number of resource libraries. Here we have resource library number 1, and we're talking AAC today. So I wanted to just kind of show you what I have in the library for AAC. You pop on down here. I have some rating tools for assessment. If you just pop on over to the AAC assessment tool section, I have a concise version of assessments, and then there's a guide for patients to be able to answer the testing questions with a pointing sheet. So here we have a perceptual rating, a perception rating scale. There's for the caregiver version, and then there's the patient version. So all of this is in one document where the patient can rate. This is actually the caregiver version here. A number of statements here where the caregiver can rank the patient as from never to always with these different statements, such as the patient can say what the patient needs through AAC if only basic communication is needed without help, from never, occasionally, sometimes, mostly, always. And there's just a number of statements here, and the patient is ranked, and they're at the end. And then there's a scoring projection data from 10 to 50. And so there's 2 versions of this caregiver version, and then there's the patient version. And as a self-perception rating scale. So these are the same questions, just from a patient perspective. So those are some informal rating options that are there. And we'll go back here to, and then for the self rating and for the caregiver versions, I also have just for the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if the patient would like to just point to the never, occasionally, sometimes, mostly, or always, that way they can have that tool there for easier answering of the questions. So that's there under the resource library for assessment tools. I also have a section for AAC handoutables. And under this section, I have an alphabet board. I also have a sheet for patients to use for communicating if they have a medical appointment and they would like for providers or other medical staff to ask them yes/no questions, or they would like to communicate in writing, or they would just like additional time to communicate. So there's that. If they want to communicate through writing, through texting, or through low or high-tech communication, these are just some ways that they can communicate quickly through a method of printing this out. So to kind of communicate how they communicate in a printed form to start the conversation that they communicate through AAC. I also have a no-tech sheets for communicating in yes/no, yes/no maybe, a yes/no I don't know choices. So we'll just pop down here to the yes/no I don't know no choices. So let's say you have a patient who can only communicate through pointing. We have the yes, I don't know, and no options here. And they're, as you can see, they're color coded. And here's yes, no, not sure, ask in a different way, please, as options here. So these pages may be a good place to start if you're not sure if this might be an option for them if you're just starting out with no tech. If you're looking at a pointing system. So please check out Nice Speech Lady. We have obviously other resources here under AAC, and also we have the home program section here where we have a lot of information available to you for the home programs section. We have communication needs practice ideas. We have AAC greetings. We also have AAC specific social requests just for practicing different areas of communication. So these may be for communicating, I would like the TV on, I'm feeling dizzy, I would like to do something else. So these are just ideas in communicating specific social requests. Thank you for that. Now we'll transition to one of our sponsors of Nice Speech Lady.
Hi, this is Walt Fritz from Foundations and Manual Therapy Seminars. I want to share just a little bit of information about my Manual Therapy for Voice and Swallowing Disorders live seminar as well as the online seminar. Manual therapy is a fairly recent inclusion into the world of voice and swallowing, but there's robust evidence to support it. What does it support though? Does it support that we're able to impact tissue selectively, or is it a more complex process? I think it's the latter. In my seminars as well as the online trainings, it's more than just learning to work with soft tissue. It's really providing a unique way to engage with an individual, and whether it's through this line of work, the manual therapy, or any kind of intervention that we use, I think that patient interaction is huge. And I invite you to take a look at the website, waltfritz.com. Have a lot of offerings around the country, and like to see you sometime soon.
Stacey Neustadt is a speech-language pathologist and certified autism specialist. 13 years ago, she joined a team of developers and parents to create an affordable and accessible augmentative and alternative communication system. Alexicom Tech was created with the mission to provide everyone with a way to communicate and be understood. They continue to develop AAC apps to provide a communication system for all ages and environments such as schools, hospitals, and the community. Stacey has presented at conferences such as Closing the Gap and ATIA, as well as virtual presentations throughout the world. Without further ado, let's welcome Alexicom Tech co-creator Stacey Neustadt.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for coming. I know it's early this morning, but thanks for accommodating. So before we jump into the questions, just tell our listeners and readers about yourself.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm a speech language pathologist, and it kind of stumbled in my lap because of a client that I had about 15 years ago who used AAC. And this was well before tablets, well before affordable AAC. And his parent was wondering why our device is so big and clunky and why are they so expensive? And that was kind of the start of our journey. And I love it. I've always loved AAC, and it's a big passion of mine to bring a voice to everyone that needs it.
So what are the upcoming topics? What are the big hot topics these days for AAC that would be important for us to talk about?
I feel like, especially with the year that we've had with COVID, a big topic right now is AAC and teletherapy. There's with teletherapy, we can't be there in person to model or be there in person to support our AC communicators. So there's been a lot more family involvement, a lot more parent involvement, which has been amazing. And so we've seen a lot of families using more partner aided input because they are our in-person modeler at home. And it's been great to see because parents are building confidence in modeling the AAC system, as well as other members of the family. When you're doing teletherapy, you might have grandma at the house or cousins or brothers or sisters. So it's really AAC and teletherapy, I feel like for some has been really, really beneficial. And then I really feel like AAC in the hospitals has come up a little bit more. Some companies, including ourselves, have created specific AAC apps for the hospitals, which I feel like has been huge because it's in the past in the hospital, if AAC was brought out for a patient that needed it, it was light tech. It was a board. But now with technology, people having their own iPhones or tablets, then the communication can be digital, which when it's a dynamic display, somebody has so much more that they can say. So for us, what we created were specific AAC apps for the emergency room, the ICU, and the rehab unit, because there's different things that people might say in those different units. So those are those two areas that I feel like within the last year, they've kind of come up a little bit more, and I'm excited about.
So tell us more about, let's just talk about hospitals for a second. What would you say the special challenges would be for the speech pathologist using AAC in a hospital? What sort of things can Alexicom Tech provide as solutions other than what you've already discussed?
So there's a few things. Obviously, patient care is the number one thing. If a patient can't tell a doctor where they're having pain or that they're allergic to specific medications, that can create huge consequences. And so a patient being able to communicate for themselves is huge. And then I want to add in too languages. One of the things in our healthcare apps is the patient can not only advocate what language they prefer, but also their religion. We always want to respect different cultural beliefs. And so a person being able to advocate for their specific cultural beliefs using their specific language, it almost becomes a translator immediately, because if some of the images are consistent universally, then it may be an image with their own language, but then the doctor can see and then help that patient as needed. So I feel like that's a huge piece as well. And like I said too, just the dynamic display of it. When you just have a light tech board, you're only able to say what's on that board. But if you're using a device device, not only is it dynamic, so you have multiple layers of pages, you also have that option to type in what you're trying to say as well, which really opens that communication piece.
So go ahead and tell us about your products, because we'd like to know kind of as speech pathologists how we can have access to what you have available and how we can trial these for our patients. Because I know you've shared with me some information on how to use some of the apps, and I've tried them with some of my patients. So please go ahead and share with us how others can do what you let me be able to do with some of my patients.
Absolutely. So because our goal is really to help everyone be able to communicate and be understood, our number one thing was making it affordable. I'm an SLP by trade, and so I understand as a fellow SLP, there's so many things that we have to purchase to use with our patients. So what we offer for all SLPs are free promo codes for our Elements AAC apps, and then free access to Alexicom Pro, which is our cloud-based system that has all of our page sets. And then you can put the different page sets onto any devices. So that kind of talks about our layers. So we do have a 99-cent app, which it used to be free. So if you had our free app, update it, and it'll keep any pre-made pages you already created. It just also includes some great new voices. I don't know if you guys remember the default voices for the iPad were not good at all. And so we updated the voices, so they have nice voices now, and a few other things. So our 99-cent app actually comes with over 50 pages to trial, and then you can create your own customized pages as well. And then we have our Elements apps, which is kind of our middle level. So it's not a subscription, but you can just pay for it one time, and it includes hundreds of pages because, as an SLP, again, I don't have time to create hundreds of pages if the client is able and wants all that variety of vocabulary with, tons of core words and verb conjugations, things like that. And so our Elements apps, they're available just one-time fee. They start at small as $9.99 and they go all the way up to $49.99. And are still completely customizable and usable offline. But it's just that one-time fee. So then our highest level is Alexicom Pro. And it's called Pro because it is mostly used by SLPs, school districts, hospitals, things like that, because then they can have those subscriptions to utilize with patients or students that come through. And it basically gives access to all of our page sets we've ever created. And you can publish those pages onto multiple devices. So our goal was to hit as many different users as needed. And so people have a variety of way of accessing our AAC systems.
So you will provide a promo code for speech pathologists to try out these apps with patients, and then
absolutely.
And then if speech pathologists need some guidance along the way in choosing which one to go with, or if they need help with technology, or you'll be able to help them if they reach out to you.
Absolutely. We respond via email. I set up Zoom calls like this. I give out my cell phone, however I need to support people. Absolutely.
And what would you say are the top three biggest hurdles or the top three biggest questions that come your way when you're assisting SLPs when they reach out to you in this manner?
The number one thing is definitely, which one do we choose? And, that kind of goes back to the AAC trialing. And, again, I'm an SLP first. And so even with my own clients, it's most important with which AAC system works best for the client and the family. Because I've had families where maybe a device or a system was chosen for the client, but the family, it doesn't make sense to them. And so then you're going to have device abandonment. And so definitely picking the right system is going to be number one. And that's why with our apps, we have our child apps with child images and vocabulary, our teen apps with teen images and vocabulary, and then our adult apps as well. And so sometimes when people call, sometimes I'll just tell them, hey, the 99-cent app is going to meet your needs. Maybe later you purchase the 19.99 app, but I'm all about making sure to meet the needs of the SLP and the client. So that's definitely a big one. One thing that we also get asked is about our real images. And it's usually a very positive thing. We get a lot of people who are preferring the real images, especially adults and teens. They don't necessarily want those childish images that are on most of the AAC systems that are out there. And so a lot of people reach out to us with questions about our real images. And then, a lot of our questions too are about implementation. I would say implementation is, even though it's not the number one question, it's such a huge piece. And again, it goes back to that device abandonment. Families are usually pretty tech savvy, can upload the images, can record their voices, but then they're like, okay, how do I use it? How do I get my child? How do I get my dad to use it? And it all goes back to the modeling, explaining to them that everybody learns language the way that they're inputted or given language. So that input has to match that output. So if it's sign language, you're going to sign to that person. If that person speaks Spanish, you're going to speak Spanish to that person. If the person is an AAC communicator, you need to speak in AAC to that person. So even though it kind of falls further on the questions, I would say that's really number one, is that implementation piece.
Would you say that that's an area that needs more development in terms of presentation topics also? Or, is that something that we need more help with as SLPs, or is that something that, is emerging?
Oh, I definitely think it needs more presentations and just more education. And really, because every AAC communicator is so different. And I know for parents as well as SLPs, they get lost if they present the AAC system and the communicator doesn't just dive in and use it. I have had clients like that where it's like, holy cow, it's as if they've known this AAC system all their life, even though it was just presented. And then there's other clients where you present it and they just play with it, maybe stim with it a little bit, and then it gets shoved away. And then parents are like, why aren't they just using it? Or SLPs are struggling because they're like, why can't I get them to use it? So that's definitely a piece that needs to just be explored more. And usually it goes back to, well, how much are you modeling? Or especially for our clients on the autism spectrum, is that engagement piece even there? Because there's some foundation skills that really, you have to build that relationship before that person's going to want to communicate with you, even at the nonverbal level. So there's definitely more education that needs to be done kind of on those specific populations so that somebody knows how to implement the AAC system and how to kind of troubleshoot some of those challenges.
What would you say some other topics are that we need to, develop more opportunities for education on in terms of presentations?
I definitely think it just, and this kind of goes along the lines of training, is just what to do if there's the abandonment. We all know of families and clients where it's just, maybe it's too much. I had a client who was autistic and he was about 5. He's 15 now and pretty verbal. So he doesn't even really use, or orally speaking. So he doesn't even use his device much anymore. But I remember when he was little, his mom said, it's selfish of me to not use this device. She goes, it's not easy, but if I don't teach him how to use this, one day when I'm gone, he's not going to be able to communicate. And it was huge. And I've worked with thousands of clients. And that was one family that really got it. So I would say figuring out how to support families when the device is just too much. And it's usually just baby steps. And so a lot of times with my families, I talk about connection. I do a training on how to connect with your child or your teen or your adult using communication. Because what happens is a lot of times, and I think this kind of goes back to the PEC system, we are trained to do motivation and wants and needs first. Well, that can only go so far, and not everyone's motivated to communicate wants and needs. So I talk a lot about how to connect using communication. So a lot of times I'll train my families, think of one time in the day when you're closest with your child or your dad or whoever, and model language in that moment. A lot of times for our parents, it's bedtime, because at bedtime, you give kisses, you read books, you say, I love you. So I'll say, program or find that I love you phrase in the device. And every night before you go to bed, model, I love you, so they can communicate that back to you. That's such a connecting moment. And so really training on that concept of using communication to connect, I feel like isn't out there very much. So that's definitely a huge topic that I think should be explored more. And then hopefully that reduces the abandonment of the device.
Yeah. Can we switch gears and go back to the topic of the pandemic?
Yes.
What would you say are two major lessons that we've learned as SLPs in regards to AAC regarding how we do therapy because of a result of the pandemic?
Wow. So we were all pretty much thrown into teletherapy. I don't know about you, but I was always curious about it. And now I'm like, all right, now I know how to do it, which was a blessing in disguise. Learning how to model while you're at home. A lot of times we're having to use our cell phone as a third person on the Zoom call. Sarah Gregory has been an amazing resource. She has a YouTube channel and talks about how to model on the AAC system. So I would say that has been a huge thing with COVID. And I have some clients who are advocating to stay on teletherapy because they prefer that computer-based interaction. So I feel like we've really gone out of the box with being able to model using the AAC system. And then I feel like too, with the Zoom platform, we're able to reach so many more people. I was able to add my training across the world because I did a training in South Africa, and who's a group that their resources are just now starting to expand. They're just now starting to train families on AAC systems. So I was able to do a training with a group of SLTs over there and OTs and families to teach them about AAC. So I feel like it's just opened the world of opportunities because of COVID, which has been amazing. And I feel like we're going to hit so many more families this way because we can now.
Yeah. Tell me about you as an SLP on a personal level. If you could share with us 3 things that have been challenges for you as an SLP and 3 things that have been really rewarding for you.
Yeah. So I would say some of the challenges, especially as an AAC creator, are sometimes the expectations and the criticisms that we get. A lot of times we get parents or SLPs who are like, well, why doesn't do this because it's specific to their child? Or why don't you have this image because it's this specific to their child? So definitely the expectations and the criticisms are challenging. And so I usually have to remind SLPs and families that as a developer, we're looking at popular vocabulary, core words that are used by people most often, and then reminding them that when you get your AAC system, it's about personalization. And we can never predict that personalization, what your favorite TV show is, what your favorite music group is. And so educating them on, we can put as much vocabulary in as possible, but then it's about personalization, which again, I really recommend families doing that with the AC communicator, because that's about connecting as well when you program together. That definitely is a hard piece. And then just the work-life balance. I have a passion for this, but then I'm also an SLP full-time on the side. And so figuring out how to support everyone and having that work-life balance is definitely challenging.
And then the 3 rewarding things.
So I'm definitely, I'm so inspired by my job. I absolutely love being an SLP. And I would say being an SLP is definitely humbling. I have a lot of clients where I have an idea of where I'm going to go with it, but they take me in a whole different direction that I didn't think I was going to go. So it's definitely humbling and then challenging, which I love the challenge. I love being able to meet new clients and figuring out what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and then individualizing their therapy to meet their needs, because it's definitely not one size fit all. I know we may have some goal banks and we have some, activities, but every time I meet a new client, I almost have to kind of go back to my box and adapt something specific for them. But I love it. I love the challenge.
How about, let's talk about the patients, the students, the parents, the caregivers. What are they saying in terms of AAC that we're doing well as SLPs, and what things do we need to tweak a little? What do we need to improve upon?
So ironically, with this question, the answers are the same for both. I would say it's education, because we know as SLPs, we don't get enough education when it comes to AAC when we're fresh out of school. I would say most of our education with AAC is what we teach ourselves through different blogs, different groups, and then just experience. And depending on that SLP, if the SLP dives into it and really, does all the conferences and educates themselves, they become really good at AAC. And so the families and even themselves, they're confident in providing therapy for AAC communicators. Now, on the other hand, if it's something that is intimidating and SLPs kind of avoid, inevitably they're going to have a student, a client, a family member who may need AAC, and maybe they struggle with it. And so if they have that new client and they don't dive into it, it may not be their strong point and may not benefit the family. So that education piece can go either way. So I really encourage all SLPs to just stay in the loop with AAC. A lot of times I'll see posts in some of the groups where it could be a seasoned SLP who maybe just now they're starting to work with clients. And I love that they reach out and they're like, hey, where's the best courses, or where should I educate myself on AAC? And it's great because now may be that time that they need to learn more about it. And so it really is something we do great, and maybe something we're not so good at, but it's great that SLPs reach out and start to educate themselves when they get a client that is on their caseload that needs AAC.
What are the best resources out there for someone who's just starting out? Where are the best places to go?
So we actually, on our website, have some of the best people listed. And I say they're the best because they're the ones we see most often. So if I've missed people, I definitely need, it's an ongoing list that I'm always added to. So Lauren Enders, she is a Pinterest queen. She is a great resource. Chris Bouget is a great resource as well with Rachel Medell. They do an AAC podcast. They're really good, have tons of information. Kate Ahern is a special education teacher, and she has a group on Facebook that is great. And she also runs Zoom classes, one thing that came out of COVID that has benefited her and a lot of clients as well. And then some specific AAC communicators, Lydia Dolly, she has CP, and then her own company, Click Speak Connect, which is great because she educates families. And then obviously yourself too, which you are a great resource with your blog, and hit the hospital population. All those other resources are very school-based, which we all know school is a huge percentage of SLPs, but there's more people that also need AAC out there. So there's definitely some great resources.
Well, thank you for that. Tell us about your company a little bit more, of anything else that we didn't cover. That I know in the beginning you talked about the promo codes. How can people reach you, or is there anything else about Alexicom Tech that that you didn't mention yet?
Yeah, so I kind of talked a little bit about this. One thing that makes us really unique is our real images. Personally, as an SLP, I found that a lot of times my clients preferred real images, or the learning curve for AAC went so much faster because of the real images. I had one client who the person eating made no sense to her. And I talked to her about it. And I said, well, what image do you want that's going to represent that link to your food page? And we went on Google Images, and she picked out her favorite lunchbox that she had, because that made sense to her. When she thought of food, that's what she thought of. So that is something that definitely sets us apart, are those real images. And then, like I mentioned too, we've gotten feedback from adults who've had strokes, who need AAC. They prefer those real images. And then also our page sets that are specific for each age group. And then, just having that variety of different page sets and affordability definitely sets us apart. Because this is a passion, it's not necessarily something that we want to charge a lot of money for. We do work on it a lot, so we have to charge something to kind of cover all the costs of the website, things like that. But we want people to just have access to communication. And then, one thing too is our Light app. It's a great kind of starter trial app. And I've heard a lot of SLPs talk about that, where if a family or an SLP isn't sure if it's AAC is the way to go with the client, it's a great starter to see if AAC is going to be a good technique for this client, or a good system. And even as a basic system, I had a SLP reach out to me where she just needed it for her dad who had had a stroke, because when they're making a grocery list, he couldn't remember the words to talk about the things for the grocery list. So she put images of all the different things so they could make the grocery list together. So the uses are really endless. So those are a couple of things that kind of set us apart from some of the other AAC companies. And then getting a hold of us, I've got my email up there, so you can always reach out to me. But then our website, www.alexicomaac.com, you can go to it, and it has different email addresses. We've got our tutorials from our YouTube channel, and then just some different resources as well, so people can go explore there.
Wonderful. Is there anything else I didn't ask you about that you wanted to make sure and talk about?
No, I think we hit a lot, and I'm always here for any SLPs, again, that want promo codes, or anyone that's got questions about the system and how it works. As with anything, once you or watch a YouTube video or whatever, it just kind of becomes second nature. And it's that motor planning piece with our system that you kind of figure out how to use it, and you just go with it and create pages. And that's kind of how we want to make it easy for all SLPs. And we love feedback. We love to hear how the system's working for you. We love to hear different ideas because we keep track of all that. And if it's a topic that comes up frequently, we love to make improvements. Just like our new updated Alexicom AAC app that came out, we made a bigger text box because we do have that ability for text to speech. We improved the voices and did some other things as well, just based on feedback to continue to improve our AAC systems.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Stacy, for taking the time to meet with me. I know we've spoken a few times, and I really appreciate the time you've spent today and all the times, other times we've spoken. And just encourage everyone to check out your website. If you could state the website again for me.
Yes, it's www.alexicomaac.com.
Awesome. So, all right. Well, we'll see you again, hopefully. And thanks for joining me today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
And that's the show for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please jump on over to Facebook and join the SLP Support and Nice Speech Lady Facebook group. Please also like the Nice Speech Lady Facebook page, and let us know how you're enjoying the Nice Speech Lady website. A special thanks to Stacey Neustadt for joining us today for the interview. We appreciated your time and your expertise. And thank you so much for subscribing. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, Nice Speech Lady. We appreciate that. So thank you so much. And please join us again for the Nice Speech Lady show. And we will see you next time, and have a super day. Bye-bye.